Hey, what's going on everybody, and welcome back to the Whiskey Cove. And on today's episode, we ask the question, just how good is High West's Midwinter Nights Dram Act 12? Run the video. All right then folks, it is that time of the year where we would do our annual Midwinter Nights Dram blind. So what we do is we blind 4 of the High West Midwinter Nights Dram latest releases. We have the Act 12, this year's new release. We have the Act 11, the Act 10, and then my favorite Act 9. How will they compare when we blind them? So much like every year's release of High West Midwinter Nights Dram, this is 49.3% ABV, so they're always the same ABV. Price on this, I paid $129.99, the same as last year's, or I should say the same as the 2023 release, but albeit this has gone up a little bit, but I was still able to find it for the same price. Not as cheap as the $90 from the Act 9 or the $100 from Act 10. However, what we'll do, we already have the whiskey in the glasses airing out a little bit. Let's get these bottles out here and let's get into the blind, shall we? All right then folks, and we are ready for this blind. So as you can see, we have this very nice prepared gift that I was given from Justin. Thank you, Justin's a patron and a supporter of the channel, and he also designs and makes stuff like this too, and he gave us one of these for Christmas, so now we get to use that and we have something to put this awesome blind on. With that being said, we're going to start on your left and then make your way through to your right there. So glass 1, 2, 3, and 4. We'll be taking a break between each one, and then we'll also be kind of resetting the palate. With that being said, let's get into glass number 1 here. And they all kind of look exactly the same in the glass, almost like a mahogany orange kind of reddy hue to them, if you like. There's definitely a little bit of port comes through with this coppery kind of style there. A little bit of sticking to the glass, a little lacing, if you like. Looks a little chewy. Let's go in for a nose. There's a little bit of a rye spice there. It's not really that much. Not really getting a whole lot of port coming through on this one. It just really kind of reminds me of like more of just like the traditional Rendezvous rye, and I'm really trying to search for the port on this one. And for those who don't already know, Rendezvous rye from High West is the base that they use for the High West Midwinter Nights Dram. So for me to be nosing the same notes makes a little sense here. It's quite minty, kind of spearminty there. Rolled rye, like a rolled graininess. Not really picking up a port. Maybe it's on the back end there. Has a little funkiness to this as well, almost like a little sour note. Maybe that's coming from the port, like a dried kind of winey note, like a vinegary winey note. That's exactly what it is. Pretty basic. If someone gave me this bottle, gave me this glass and they sold me this as a High West Midwinter Nights Dram, I wouldn't believe them. It's just kind of like their double rye or their Rendezvous rye blend. Let's go in for a taste here. Not really a great start with this one. It does dry out the palate a lot, as you would expect. Not much of a sweetness there. Some bacon spices there, a little bit of like a fresh like cedar kind of note coming through in this. Doesn't wow me at all. I don't know what this is. Hopefully it's not the Act 12, the new one. However, not a really a good start here. Lackluster in flavor, really trying to pull those notes out, but kind of really resiny, like again, maybe a little touch of that, like almost like vinegar note coming through. Cleanse the palate and move into glass number 2. Okay, moving on, we have glass 2 here. Palate's nice and cleansed. So this is kind of night and day different from the first one. You're definitely getting much more wininess here, more approachable wine, more berry forward wine. Dark cherry, strawberries, that's what you want from your port. Yes, it's gonna give you maybe a touch of vinegar, like that sort of note from here or there, but you want it to be an abundance of berry notes, a real nice rich sweetness there as well that pairs really well with the rye. And I'm definitely getting more of that from this time around. More rye spice. I would say not as much rye spice as the first one. This is a bit more balanced. But it's just really well put together. It just kind of blends really well. I'm not really fighting to get any flavors and any notes out of there. Let's go in for a taste here. So this second one is much more rich, oily, consistent, more full-bodied, if you like. The first one was almost like a bit of an afterthought. You get much more of that port, that berry flavors that really blends well with a good quality rye whiskey base. The oiliness of the rye whiskey just helps carry the whiskey to continue into the finish with those port strawberry notes, and that kind of dries out and you get a little bit more of the port wine that comes through. Not getting any mint in there, not much spice, little butterscotchy there, so the sweetness definitely helps with that too. So far, very stark contrast between these two. Let's go into the next glass after we reset our palate. Moving into glass 3 here. This is actually a little bit more creamy than the last one. This definitely has creme brulee vibes going on here. A nice toasted creme brulee with some like old-fashioned dark cherry spooned on top. This has a really great balance to it. I would say that the port in this one is brighter again. If we said that the port in this was non-existent, better, best so far. It definitely blends really well to the creaminess. With this one, it was more rye notes with port, but this is like vanilla, creamy creme brulee, toasty notes, and then a really nice darker cherry note coming on in there. Big brown sugar. This is very inviting, whatever it is. Very fruity. Maybe a touch of like an older oak note in there too, which is really nice, which is what we haven't got so far. And maybe a touch of spearmint there, as you usually get from a lot of ryes. In the glass, it looks quite thick as well. This is really inviting. Let's go in for a taste here. So this one is quite sweet to begin with on the palate. That does fall off a little bit, and you get a touch of like a peppercorn spice on the front of the tongue there. You get a little bit of the kind of the dry and port notes. You get more of the cherry. You don't really get too much brighter port notes. It's definitely like darker, thicker, oilier notes on this one. It's very approachable. You do get more of the oak there, although it's not much of like an oak tannin note. It's definitely more of like a musty oak flavor. This doesn't taste as bright as it did on the nose. Very bright on the nose. Palate did fall off a little bit. I want to go in for one more taste on this one. Yeah, and as it kind of went more into the finish this time, it did get a little bit bitter towards the back end there. Like again, you can get that with port finished whiskies because port can kind of dry out the whiskey quite a lot in the end, and it has on this one. But started really rich and really creamy and kind of soured out a little bit, which is okay. It's a port finished whiskey, I understand that. So let's reset the palate and then move into the last glass 4. All right then, glass 4. I don't want to say it almost looks a little lighter, but it kind of does look a little lighter in the glass. Equally as oily as the rest of them have been so far. Let's go in for a nose. This nose is a little more spicier than the rest of them. It's really interesting that they also all have similar quality so far on the nose, but they also have a little bit different going for them, which is really interesting. This definitely has much more rye spice. Maybe more of like a licorice note and like a hazelnut note going on there too. More chocolatey. Some of the port, but unlike this one and this one, I would say the port isn't the star of the show here. It's kind of like the rye is put up into a pedestal again, and the port is like a supporting act with kind of like the nuttiness there too. It's a great nose in whiskey, I'll definitely say that. It's just not that port forward that maybe you're looking for with a Midwinter Nights Dram. Let's go in for a taste here, glass 4. There's the port. The port is the star of the show when it comes to the palate. It hit me straight away. Big strawberry notes, big raspberry notes, berry forward, very, very berry forward. The spice is almost gone at this point. You get really nice sweetness that supports the port as well. It's not really drying out my palate as much as I'd expect from port finished whiskey. There's a really nice sweetness that runs through here. It's more of like a cane sugar sweetness as opposed to maybe like a creme brulee creamy brown sugar sweetness that we got from the last one. That's very different, and it does end a little mintier as well as like you'll kind of expect from a lot of rye whiskey. I want to go in for one more quick taste on this bad boy. Yep, there is again. Big punch of port on the nose, on the front of the palate. Don't really get much spicy, but if I was just about to go outside right now, I feel like maybe I just brushed my teeth a little bit. Maybe this has maybe a little bit too much mint, or maybe it's just because I've drunk too much High West Midwinter Nights Dram at this point. However, I need to pause the camera a little bit. I'm gonna taste through them a little more, and then we'll come back and get them in an order. All right then, folks. Then finally, we have them in an order. So let's just delve straight into things, shall we? I have the key in my pocket here. Last place was glass 1. I think that was a little weird. I don't know what was necessarily going on. It just felt like very lower quality compared to these other two. It didn't look like it was, felt like it was blended well. We didn't get much port there as well, just some off flavors. So let's have a look what this was. This is going to be glass B. And that is going to be, this was pretty obvious, I think, for me personally, as a big Midwinter Nights Dram fan. So this is the Act 10. So Act 10 has probably been the worst Midwinter Nights Dram release that I've ever tasted, and I think I've had all from 4 up. I don't know what happened. I think that this was a release that maybe they put too much of their own distillate and they haven't quite refined it out. It's just not very good. So this was last. This was glass 1. So next up, in 3rd place, was actually glass 2. This is going to be A for Alpha, and that is going to be, okay, well, now we're making waves here. So this is 11. So far we've had 10 and 11. I haven't had too much of 12 yet, but this makes a little sense. 10 wasn't very good at all. 11 was better than 10, but not as good as 9. It kind of brought it back a little bit with more port, but it wasn't as balanced as you would like it to be with Midwinter Nights Dram. So we have 2 left. We have the 9 and the 12, and this is really good to see because we want to see a progress in the last few years of it, bringing it back to the good old days of 9. So with that being said, in 2nd place, we had glass 4, which was the last one we tasted, and that is going to be D for dog, and that is Midwinter Nights Dram 12. So this one was really interesting. On the nose, I couldn't really pick out too much of the port, but on the palate, it was a bit of a port bomb there, and it balanced out really well. I would say, obviously, now that we can definitely say that the winner today was glass 3, which was C for Charlie, which was, of course, 9. So we can put that down. We can kind of have a conversation about these two. So I felt that between these two, this had more port on the palate, but I don't know what was going on with this one that made it so good. It was that rich, creamy, like creme brulee note with that dark kind of old-fashioned cherries kind of vibe going on with this one. I would say this would be a really good whiskey to put into a cocktail and just drink neat. 9 has probably been my favorite High West Midwinter Nights Dram since 4 and 5. So it doesn't surprise me this is coming in at number 1. But what does surprise me is that these two were considerably better than these two. So the divide was quite big between them, but this was definitely much closer to 9. So I think the High West Midwinter Nights Dram are trending back in the right direction. Please continue and go again for next year. 13 unlucky for some, I know, but let's continue to do really good stuff with the Midwinter Nights Dram. So yes, still Act 12 is not as good as 9, but we're getting there. As we drink through the world's whiskies, one glass at a time. Cheers.